My journey is really to continuing to decolonize myself.
Oh, wow.
That old thought back in the days, having been born in the Philippines and thinking that you should stay in the background.
Yeah.
There's a lot of those coming from our colonizers. The way we were undermined as women, you just continue to see the light and follow that light. And that's decolonizing yourself from old beliefs and old expectations that no longer apply. You have to live through all of that. You have to prove your work. Yes.
Hope everyone is enjoying the first days of fall and the start of Philippine-American History Month. To get a deeper understanding of Stockton's distinct place in Filipino-American history, I reached out to Little Manila Rising, an organization whose mission is to remember and reclaim Stockton's proud Filipino history. When I arrived, the organization's Community Development Director, Irene Calimlim, and board member, Manang Elena Mangahas, welcomed me with a tour and intensive history lesson of Stockton's Little Manila.
My name is Irene Calimlim with Little Manila Rising. I'm their Community Development Director, but I think unofficially help maintain all of their historical archives and information. And I've also recently come across the term cultural keeper that I really like too.
Yes,
so
yes.
Pull that informally.
Yeah. Or a culture bearer.
Yeah.
You're a culture keeper. I'm a culture bearer. I bear it wherever I go, and I unload it wherever I stop. Manang Elena, Mangahas. I was on the founding board members of the Little Manila Foundation, and we've seen quite a lot so that it made you stay longer. It makes you want to stay until a change happens. We fought together, and I think it's important. I think we've been revolutionary, as all Filipinos are in history. We always are in some kind of revolution, but revolution is good.
So this is really the hub of all that history of immigration, of discrimination. Everything happened here.
In the 60s, all over America, people were building freeways and strategically placing them in Chinatowns, Little Manilas to try to displace and break up that community.
Today, that same Little Manila has been reduced to a few signs and banners, a polluted highway strategically built to displace hundreds, if not thousands, of Asian American families, and only a handful of decaying buildings in constant threat of being torn down. The story of Little Manila Stockton is not just their story, it is our story, to share, to discover, and to create together. Now, on to the interview.
Tell me about how you came to this organization and why this organization means so much to both of you personally.
So I moved into Stockton at the age of 7 into a home on 516 South Hunter Street, and it was within the Little Manila historic neighborhood, the neighborhood that this organization was founded to preserve, share the history of, and protect and hopefully revitalize. I grew up going to elementary school, just seeing a lot of the Filipino influence in the neighborhood, walking to a building where I would see a lot of elders playing cards and just seeing the rich diversity of Stockton and not really understanding the value of that diversity and the value of that history. Not until I went to college and just saw the vast difference socioeconomic wise of South Stockton compared to the affluent places that universities are at. And in undergrad, took a alternative spring break trip that was about Filipino-American history, and they ended up doing tours. And one of the tours they did was coming to Stockton. Before Little Manila really started doing that history, where we had no idea how rich of a culture and how much really prominent Filipino leaders were here until learning about it in our adult life. And I wish I'd had, because that would have maybe shaped a little bit of my path earlier towards this social justice and preservation area. So I came back to Stockton after school, really focused on neighborhood level development. And I worked doing a lot of environmental justice programs and health programs and youth development work. And then realized, I was really passionate about neighborhood level development. And so I studied public health and city planning, left me with the starting foundational knowledge to transition into my role here on some of that original vision that they had about how can we save these buildings and how can we revitalize the neighborhood and build things that our community needs to learn about the history, but also build for the future. So that's how I got into Little Manila.
I had a different start. I came in 1981. I birthed my children first. I have 2 daughters in the Philippines before coming down here. Because the truth is, I didn't want to come to America. I was part of an activist group back in the Philippines. That was during martial law when the petition for my family was approved. And I had to make a hard decision. do I really want to go to America, the country that we've been opposed to? Or do I want to stay in the Philippines and continue to fight the revolution against martial law? I call it the revolution. But anyway, because my husband's decision was to come to America, I had to make a hard decision. We came in 1981. I made sure that I give birth first so I can call my children Filipinas. And then when I came down here, my very first job was actually working in a Filipino organization that was funded by the state of California. And the guy who was the director was actually a good friend of Cesar Chavez. He hired me because he's also an immigrant and he saw that I would have a difficult time looking for a job. So I did run the program for him, which was giving jobs to Filipinos in between working the farms and the crops. He got me to be in charge of the whole program. And that's when I got to meet the Filipino community of the 1940s. And they were already in their 70s and 80s. The office that I was in became the place where Filipinos would come in and tell me stories. I accidentally became a repository of all the stories of the Filipinos, their struggles, the reforms that they wanted to happen in government, their aspirations as Filipinos, and I heard them all. I was let in on every Filipino's family, so I broke bread with them. I became that other Filipina that they met from the Philippines they could relate to, really went through the whole gamut of experience being a Filipino in Stockton. Why? Come to find out later, this is the hub of Filipino-American history. I did not know that until I was meshed into the family lives of Filipinos. And then by the time Dylan Delvo and Don Mabalon came back here, they said, Manang Elena, we want to organize. And you got these two energetic young people who said, we got to change where we are here. So I got pulled into Little Manila and as founding stage of an organization that had a plan to remember and reclaim the history of Filipino-Americans, because nothing, absolutely nothing was said about it or written about it.
Because we're also doing this for the Filipino on the Rise podcast, I wanted to ask, you both are such strong women. You're dedicated to your purpose, to your mission. Is that something that comes to consciousness for you, that you're like, okay, we are female leaders in this movement, that we want to preserve our history, we want to bring this forward? Personally, what I've experienced and seen is that in the Philippines, there are a lot of female leaders.
Mm-hmm. I was a chairperson of Filipino Women's Network for a good 10 years, and that's empowerment of Filipinas in the diaspora. We started out with the United States from coast to coast. We trained for leadership, and we brought in the concept of mentorship, one Filipina to another. We're intergenerational. We created pathways for Filipinas to succeed in their career and at the same time be credible in the mainstream community, not just within the community. We published a book named Disrupt, three editions so far. But that's the network of Filipinas that is out there, empowered and going through leadership and mentorship, not just as a skill, but also as a must-do, as a mission. And that's where we are. At the same time, too, look at all these Filipinas back in the days. They were in charge of Filipino organizations. There is a legacy to be told about how Filipinas led organizations. They were not just wives, they were actually officers of the early 1930s Filipino organization. There's something innate about Filipina leadership that comes from the past. They're not born here. They came here as immigrants, this particular group of people. I think there's the part that has a legacy part to it. And then there's also that, let's just be proud about who we are. And step up and be visible in the community, be visible in society, and create the change that you want to happen and be recognized as leaders in the various professions or occupations that you are in. Young leaders like Irene, they're finding their place too in the Filipino-American society as well as in the mainstream society. And what they do professionally and what they create as pathways for the next Irenes who will come are all part of a very intentional living, kind of of life that you want to live. You have to leave your legacy in your community. And that's the consciousness that's already here. And it's happening. So leadership is important for Filipinas and to support each other as Filipinas, not just in America, but in the diaspora, because change is happening all over. And if we recognize it as this is the space that we are in, let's make it happen.
Yeah.
Girls.
Yeah.
Pinoys.
Yeah.
Well, Pinay power is really true. It doesn't take a female president to make that happen.
There's different layers of it. I think part of it growing up in Stockton, just kind of the lack of resources here, just really, I think, instills a layer of Stockton identity where people are very resilient and scrappy and going to figure things out on their own and make it work. A second layer is my positionality in the story, like trying to do work to improve Stockton has afforded me a lot of opportunities, like getting scholarships to go to university. And because I had the mission of I want to learn and be able to bring that back to help my community is something I'm lucky of getting resources and stuff to help me on that, and feeling like scared in school when I'm like learning things where I feel like I'm really out of my comfort zone, like this is really difficult, but being able to come back and really see like the tools and the skills that you gain from there really is what people have applied to marginalized people and what you can apply to take your power back. And then also like I think a lot of my peers who are women have worked in experiences where maybe the women are doing a lot of the work behind the scenes, like a lot of the really heavy lifting, but not getting the credit for it. I know for myself, I'm ready to step in front and not always have to be the background and seeing other people's that as well. I don't know if there's something about Pinay women, but I just see so many of my peers. I'm like, why is everyone really strong, assertive people and just doing so much that like there's got to be something about it.